The move by some northern aspirants for the leadership positions in the National Assembly to be thrown open instead of it being zoned has been highlighted by our sister publication this day. The aspirants from the Northwest, North Central, and Northeast are opposed to the zoning of the leadership positions in the National Assembly because the party did not zone its presidential ticket to any geopolitical zone. This day investigation, however, revealed that despite the opposition by the northern aspirants, the North Central may retain the position of the national chairman of the party, just as the party may settle for the Southeast or the South-South for the position of the Senate president. At the moment, 30 senators have been re-elected and among the 98 seats declared so far. Joining us on this show this morning to discuss zoning of the National Assembly leadership positions is Cletus Obun, member APC Presidential Campaign Committee. Welcome to the morning show, Mr. Obun. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, great Malabite.
Malabite, okay. The next thing now is action.
Action, positive.
Action. Well, let me ask you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yesterday we had on this program Senator Ndoma Egba, who was saying that, well, with the presidential candidate of the APC, now president-elect from the South, being a Muslim, and the vice president-elect also being a Muslim and a northerner, it's only fair for the purpose of justice and equity to zone the position of the Senate president to the Southeast, and to also ensure that the next president of the Senate will be a Christian and not a Muslim. And that view expressed by Senator Ndoma Egba, is also heard by quite a number of persons in the party, particularly from the South-South and the Southeast. What do you think?
Well, let me start this conversation by saying that in order for us to have a great perspective about what is going on and why it should be the way it is, let me first agree completely with those who say that the South, and Southeast, indeed Southern Nigeria, should produce the Senate president. It accords with equity. It accords with the mood of the nation in terms of stabilizing the polity. It is not enough to get a position, but to what effect and to what impact, and what is the purport of it. In other words, we are saying that to take the Southern Nigeria to produce a the Senate president in this dispensation is only to stabilize the polity, and to make him a Christian further deepens our democracy and takes into consideration the sensitivity of our own primordial instincts, which includes religion and tribe. No matter how we try to play the ostrich on those two issues, first, you will agree with me that APC had to barely scrap through these elections because of the Muslim ticket. We cannot exacerbate and attenuate that crisis with another leadership of the National Assembly producing the same religion. In other words, it will confirm to the Christian population that the Islamization agenda is complete, which has been there on the table since 2015. I have been deep enough involved. I was part of the foundation members of APC, so I should know what it took us to convince people in 2015, 2019, and 2023 today to get us to believe that it was not a Muslim party to be in APC. And so, for me, the South should take the Senate presidency. Where I divert and disagree completely and totally, almost violently, with the learned Silk, Senator Victor Ndomeba as former Senate leader, is where he says, and microzones it to the Southeast. Justice, history, convention, constitution do not agree with that position. In spite of his attempt to drag in the constitution, misinterpret it, and give us an anachronistic impression of the historical antecedents of Senate presidency in Nigeria. And from 1963 to today, the Southeast alone have produced 9 Senate presidents, beginning from Nwafo Orizu, who later on became a president when the crisis of 1966 erupted. He became even an acting president on the basis of the 1963 Constitution. Now today, between 1999 and 24 years, because in 48 days' time, we would have done 24 years, 8 years of those 24 years, that is 1/3 of that tenure, was occupied by the Southeast. If by his own argument, the Southwest had President Obasanjo and therefore the Southeast had it, and that's the only basis for it, I don't know how else to explain that except to say that there is some ulterior, if not sinister, intention in ever advocating. Otherwise, how do you produce in politics all the votes, all the economic, in fact, the economic nerve center of Nigeria is in the South-South, and you're asking them, after winning 5 states out of 6, it is only Delta State that wouldn't get 25% in the South-South, and you now come and say that the only thing the Southeast should be, the South-South should do, is to go and watch how what they produce is being shared among other parts of the country. I don't know what sense of justice that brings. And if you know how tenuous that is and how offensive it is to the South people to hear that one of their very senior citizens, a senior advocate of Nigeria, who has sat in the Senate as Senate leader, moving from Deputy Senate President to Senate leader, advocating that his own zone should be excluded, I think something has gone wrong. And that thinking has to be reversed. And indeed, this morning, I've come to say the South-South region will know no peace if the Senate presidency is not given to it, because in politics we have contributed, in economy we have already put Nigeria where it is, the food basket, the breadwinner of Nigeria, if you like, the breadwinner of Nigeria.
Mr. Obun, is that a threat?
It is neither, no, it is rather an affirmation of the feelings of the South-South people. You know already that in trying to exclude the South-South from the formula of benefiting from its own product, which is oil, you know what happened under Obasanjo towards the tail end of Obasanjo regime and what Yar'Adua inherited. And we are still, in fact, when you have back mend all the militancy in the Niger Delta going down, it is because there is a conscious attempt and deliberate effort by the Buhari regime to ensure that there is an inclusiveness and there is a give back to the communities. With the Ogoni cleaning, with all kinds of projects in the South-South, they should not attenuate that. So I am not threatening, but I'm saying that that is what may likely happen. And you know that this is not fictional. It is not a fiction. It is a fact of our polity, it's a fact of our economy, and it's a fact of our present temperament. And indeed, what the South-South is saying is, Senate presidency, we should be given a right of first refusal in the southern Nigeria today as it stands, because we contributed to making this president. We contributed to making the economy, and therefore we deserve to be given the right of first refusal.
Okay.
And in fact, I remember you or one of you asking specifically, what do you say about Akpabio? Because you would have said, okay, is by the Senate rules and parliamentary privileges that the most ranking, we have a ranking senator in Senator Akpabio.
Okay,
so
Mr. Obun, so it's
by what
clear.
calculations are you saying that?
Mr. Obun, it's clear that you are putting...
Yes.
Yeah, it's clear that if you were to support, your support would go with Senator Godswill Akpabio. But as a member of the APC Presidential Committee, I did ask Senator Ndoma Egba the same question, a similar question yesterday. And by the way, he'd said that there was no one who was specifically backing. He was just asking that in the spirit of fairness, the Senate presidency should be zoned to the Southeast. But going back to the introduction, the presidency of the APC wasn't zoned. So presidential candidate of the APC wasn't zoned. It was thrown open to the one that had the most votes in terms of at primary level. So anyone could aspire to be president. Why are you then calling for the zoning of the principal offices of the House in terms of the Senate and the House of Assembly? Because in the spirit of fairness and justice, as you've mentioned, people would say that wasn't considered in choosing, in nominating the vice president of candidacy following that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu had emerged as presidential flag bearer, being both a Muslim ticket. Why now? Why is this important now? Should it not just be thrown open again based on merit and the people's choice? In this case, the senator's choice.
Now, the senators have a choice in Parliament, I've been a parliamentarian, I will tell you that in Parliament, the Parliament hates to be guided or teleguided. Two, let me take a broader perspective when you ask why it was not considered and why it was thrown open when it came to the contest for presidency. Don't forget that when you say it was thrown open, in spite of it being thrown, it was a guided openness, because if you remember, it was the northern governors of APC that came out strongly, vehemently, in press conferences, in written documents, in private meetings, in caucus meetings, in governors' forum meetings, and such other specialist stakeholders meetings, to insist that the South must take the presidency. And that is why even on the floor of the voting, you will discover that most of those who contested were from there. Even when they flew the kite that there was a presidential directive to anoint a candidate, you saw the resistance. You saw the vehemence with which the governors rose to defend that. So that laid the foundation to show that it was not in any way as free as it was thought. Two, is that why now? It is because having produced a president of same faith, all parties, whether it is Labour Party, whether it is NNPP, whether it is PDP, all of them took a gamble. For instance, the PDP constitution required that you should rotate the presidency. When it was not done, you saw the reaction. And of course, the biggest beneficiary was the APC. Labour Party, Peter Obun was there until he even bought the form, until he discovered he could not. He had to leave for Labour Party. So he took a gamble. Then the APC took a gamble with the Muslim ticket. All of them gambled, and it has paid off the way it has come. Where we are now is such that Section 14(3) has to be invoked, because the framers and writers of our Constitution, in letter and spirit, deliberately ensured that neither race, tribe, religion, or sex, or belief should exclude anybody. And that for us, knowing our plurality, the plurality of our nation, and the heterogeneous nature of Nigeria, it is only in the interest of national peace and unity that a sense of belonging should be given to every tribe, no matter how small, and every faith, no matter how small, in what we are doing. If you remember, several times when you are taking the oath, most people go for affirmation rather than going for oath on the Quran or the Bible. So it is for the purpose of peace first and national unity that now it has become necessary that in the present reality, after elections, we must have to balance things out in terms of religion and tribe, which have become a very major deciding factor in our politics. You can't wish that away. If we escaped it at the electoral level, at the election level, at the stabilization level, at the governance level, in the polity, it is important that we take into consideration all those things that tend to divide us and bring a sharp crisis into the polity and into our nation. Already we have insecurity, we have a lot of things going on in our hands. Our basket is a basket full of trouble is what we have presently. Not just because it is Nigeria, it is global. Whether it is the US and Trump struggling with his January 6th, whether it is China trying to encircle Taiwan, whether it is the Muslim getting into British government, all we are seeing is that the globe, the nation, the world is today not at peace. And we cannot exacerbate the crisis with the kind of things that we can avoid. We can avoid the crisis of religion, tribe, and other such insinuations that make our country unstable. So for me, it is important that the South be given a first of all, like I will advocate also that in the North Central and the Northeast, Northwest, Northeast in the North already has Deputy Vice President. The North Central and the North are now left with the issue of producing the Speaker of the House of Reps and the Deputy Senate President. Between those two, there will be a balance. And I will agree with Senator Ndomegba to that extent that it should again be given to the Northern Christian. If you are bringing a Christian as Deputy Senate President in the South, the Speaker from the North should be a Christian. Okay. While the Deputy Senate President can be a Christian or Muslim, it doesn't matter. But if you ask me, I will tell you that today, as we sit, after this election, Nigeria must have to find a square root. And the only way to do so is to balance the tendencies that tend to divide the country and put us on edge.
Okay. Two things. Now that this matter of the leadership of the 10th National Assembly is on the front burner in relation to the politics of ethnicity and religion, are you aware of any efforts within the party, your party, to build a consensus, to forge a consensus? That's one. The second one is that Malam Salisu Lukman, who is a member of the National Working Committee of your party, issued a statement yesterday saying that, look, the Northeast or the Northwest should forget about producing Senate president. But then titled the statement, Cash and Carry Contest for Leadership of the 10th National Assembly. Cash and Carry Contest for Leadership of the 10th National Assembly. Do you have any information about how, APC members jostling for leadership of the Senate are engaged in this alleged cash and carry politics?
Well, Dr. Abati, great Malabai, I will tell you on the issue of consensus, it is in the enlightened self-interest of APC to get into a consensus because they cannot produce a two-third. In any case, in voting for a Senate president, the rules are clear about how it should emerge. You will need, for the first time, we're having 8 political parties in that National Assembly. And therefore, the tables have changed, the equation has changed, and therefore the strategy and tactics must change. It is therefore in the interest of APC to do so, and I'm very aware, and I've participated, and I'm participating in some of the discussions with some of the senators across the zones about how to go and produce a president of the party's interest. We succeeded in 2019 thanks to the political sagacity of the then chairman, Comrade Adam Soshimole. Today, we are again, the party is on trial. So we don't return to 2015, where we had to produce a Senate president that was antagonistic, what the lawyers will call a hostile witness. We had to produce a hostile member who became an antagonist rather than a protagonist of the government of the day. So if APC does not learn from that lesson, then definitely we are not ready to move forward. So I can assure you, and I'm informing you this morning, that there are conscious efforts at different levels to build a consensus, not just within the APC, but with other political parties, because there must be some level of inclusiveness, and there's so much on the table that all parties, of course, you have the minority caucuses, and then you also have committees to compensate and all that. That horse trading is going to take place. It is natural within parliamentary procedures and practices all over the world. And therefore, Nigeria is not going to be an isolation, and APC is not going to gamble and fumble at an auspicious moment like this. On the issue of cash and carry, as alleged by some of our members, I have my doubts that under the present cashless situation and under the present stringent CBN conditions to banks, I don't know who is going to cash who, because there's nobody who is, I know there are more senators and more House of Reps members who are new, first-timers than others. But I don't know anybody whose pedigree has been now going to be a cash and carry thing, who has a price, and the price is cash. Any person who sits on the Nigerian Senate, out of 109 of them, and his price is how much in dollars or any currency on earth, is unworthy of the title of a senator, and will definitely want to look back at his constituents, because there are 109 senatorial seats in Nigeria. And those 109, I am not sure of anyone that will produce a senator who is so cheap that he'll go and sit on the table and start pricing how much they will pay him to vote when he won his election the way they came. These elections have proven to us that all along, Nigerians have been into a cesspool of corrupted practices. Of course, the late Yaradua told us so, that his own election was not perfect. Very few have had the courage, but we all know this. Therefore, the present election, whatever you say about it, has gone in a manner that shows that there's some credibility, in which people who are not expected were losing their bases and all kinds of things, and all the parties are winning. The shock is that where you win, election was not rigged. Where you lose, election was rigged. The beavers didn't work. There was no uploading and all that. I don't want to get into that argument, but importantly, cash and carry in 2023 for a senator or a House of Reps member will definitely be the most degrading and absurd thing to happen on the floor of the Nigerian Senate. I don't know any parliamentarian who in 2023 will go and debase himself to the point of negotiating for a vote for a leadership that is going to carry the weight of this country, because the fulcrum upon which all democracies survive, the oil with which parliament survives, is its independence and autonomy. And I think no senator will go and do cash and carry.
Okay, thank you. So you talk about independence and autonomy, but I just want to go back to a statement you made earlier on when you were responding to my question in regard to the voting and how voting was done in the primaries. You alluded to the fact that that voting was guided. So at the primaries, the people who voted knew how to vote and in what way to vote, especially for a Southern presidential flag bearer. But there are more than one Southern candidates during the primaries. How did you arrive at the guiding, and can you expand a bit on what you mean by the votes were guided? Was it, I know you said you can't be influenced, was it guided by, a belief system? Was it by money? How was it guided? Then the other part is that what then would you say to the northern senators who are vying for Senate presidency? We have some top contenders like Senator Jibrin Barao of Kano Central. There's Sani Musa from Niger. We have even the current Senate President Ahmed Lawan, who is also thrown his hat in the ring, and a few others. What would you say to them? Because what they're saying is that, as you've mentioned, it's a very important position. It's the oil of parliamentary decisions. So it should be based on competence. It should be based on what the person has to bring to the office, as opposed to just as just a way of saying let it be zoned to this particular area. What would you say to your northern counterparts who are saying that they also should have a shot at Senate presidency?
Let me say this to you: in politics, all is fair and fair in everything, and one of the things that is not fair is influence
by war. You mean
influence by gratification. Yes.
As in war, you mean?
Yes. But let me say this:
there is not supposed to be a war.
Yes. Politics is war without bullets. Politics is war without bullets, because in trying to maneuver your way, in trying to push your way and push your interest and push your candidate, you have to engage in several kinds of tactics and strategies. So the northern candidates who are coming out, simple strategy: you can't reach for the sky, reach for the roof. That is where we are. They know clearly that it will be unfair to have tradition and convention have demonstrated, except where we had a doctrine of necessity being invoked under Ken Namani, under David Mark, where he had to come from the north when the president was from the south. The reason was because it was an understanding that it was a continuation of the Yar'Adua tenure that Jonathan was enjoying, and therefore it became important that the Senate presidency, again for the purpose of national unity and to assuage the area that felt that it lost somebody due to natural circumstances, not by impeachment, but by death. And therefore, everybody understood that Senate president should remain in the north in order to assuage that, and some kind of compensation, some political compensation, some moral suasion persuaded everybody to accept that condition. But thereafter, because this president was from the south in 1999 to 2007, the president remained in the south, and it was in the southeast for 8 years. When it came to the north, it went to the north, north central. The northwest produced, and the north central produced the Senate president. And when the doctrine of Jay was invoked and they came up with David Mark, he remained there just to complete the 6 years. Now, when it went back to the north, because now Jonathan had left, the Senate presidency came to the north. While this one was from the president was from the northwest, the northeast produced the Senate presidency. So convention, tradition, and peace and unity prevailed and became the dominant consideration in the production and sequence of Senate presidency. This is one reason for which I find it difficult to understand how you will not again go back to the issue of the South-South producing the Senate presidency. If you are producing the president for 8 years and you are now asking your brother in the South-South to wait again for another 8 years by the will of God. Therefore, the issue of our brothers in the North, especially North Central and Northwest. Northwest contributed so much for this election. And in politics, it is NC. No contribution, no chop. You cannot come to the table of equity. You cannot come to the table of equity with dirty hands. You must have to first show that you had an interest. You had an overriding interest in the contribution in the making of the cake before you can ask for it. But because of our democracy and our peace, you can see the Constitution insisting that even the weak, even the cripples, even those who are disadvantaged should also be given a space on the national table. And that is why everything can go to every zone. And that's what Section 14.3 is intended to cure and to prevent a breakdown of a feeling of alienation. So on the issue the second, hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, please.
Yes. The second issue you raised was on the issue of, you talked about work level of guidance. I am not afraid to say this. I have participated, I have contested elections. I have put out candidates to contest elections. I've been on presidential campaigns. As state chairman, I had governors running elections and delegates were being produced. I can tell you that no delegate is produced by accident. And when you talk about merit, it is superfluous. It is outlandish to presuppose that there's a zone, a town, a community, or even a local government in this country that does not have a competent person that can become a Senate president. You can't qualify to be a senator and say you cannot qualify to be a Senate president. So the issue of competence is in some way, some very, placatory, some euphemism for insulting, some quiet insult on anybody to suggest that there are places or senators that are not qualified to be senators. It's first among equals. Everybody who comes to the Senate comes as a senator. Nobody comes there as a presiding officer or as an officer of the Senate or any parliament for that matter, even a councillor. You are first of all a councillor or a senator or a federal house member or state house member before your colleagues now nominate or elect you to lead them. And that is why the turnover of presiding officers in the parliament is so easy and so fluid. At any time they don't want you again, you go. I remember in my time we had 3 speakers. We had 3 speakers in the Crossbar House of Assembly, and we proceeded from there because at every time a presiding officer does not conform with what his colleagues and the spirit of his colleagues, he is thrown out with 2/3 members. So as far as I'm concerned, the guided voters, they are delegate owners. I have used that word before. They are owners of delegates. People own delegates, not by any influence. For instance, a governor of a state, you go for congresses and you are electing people. Whoever is elected will come back to the governor and say, sir, I emerged from my ward. He goes back there to pay allegiance and show loyalty. What is the reason? It's simple. There may be appointments. Were you loyal? Where loyalty does not translate to subservience. Where loyalty does not assume to some form of idiotic compliance to even inordinate and unofficial benefits that are not allowed by law. So for me, guided democracy, guided voters, and guided delegates influence what you know as delegate election. And that is why most of us in APC have always insisted on open primaries rather than delegates, because it is nearly impossible for you to bring delegates that do not have those who control them, either as opinion leaders or as party leaders, who have benefited from them or who shall benefit from them. But when you leave an open primaries, every card-carrying member of the party participates, and it is nearly impossible for you to go and meet every card-carrying member of the party. So in that way, you get a true representative of the people. And that is why the immediate impact of primaries always impact on the election. What happens in primaries affects the election. You remember yesterday, Senator Ndomegba telling you that he lost to a Labour Party that he didn't consider as part of the contending forces in his ward, in his polling unit. He told you he lost.
Mr. Yes. Obun, just to try to balance this, you know, there are persons who are also just as passionate about the argument that, look, nobody should look at ethnicity or even religion. After all, when President Jonathan was president, we had the Senate President, Senator David Mark, Christian. Deputy Senate President, Senator Ike Ekwuremadu, Christian. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Patricia Ite, at a time, also a Christian. And then the argument has also been made, specifically by Senator Ali Ndume, that look, He said members of the Senate who will choose their own leaders, and that the fact that he has shown interest and it comes from the Northeast does not matter. After all, at the moment, the Vice President is from the Southwest. The Speaker of the House of Representatives is from the Southwest. So for every example that you give, there is a counter view. And, people will supply other examples. But what if it then happens that the South-South does not get it? What if it happens that the Southeast does not get it?
Well, let me say this to you. In the emergence of nations, what influences constitutional amendments, policy changes, is the mood of the nation and the realities, contemporary realities. That is what shapes the future of nations and the presence of nations. Now, in the case of Nigeria of today, you are aware, many commentators have insisted that Nigeria is now more divided than ever before. And if you have acknowledged that, because of mutual suspicion existing between the ethnic nationalities that is Nigeria, you cannot cure that with a continuous concentration of power and resources in the hands of either one tribe, one religion, or one class of people. Therefore, you will remember that in talking about the South, today, apart from Osun State, in southern Nigeria, almost every state has a Christian governor. And religion in the South is dominant. Christianity is dominant in the South, just like Islam is dominant in the North. Now, if you have over 19 governors in the North, and of those 19, 4 are Christians, and in the South, 17 governors. Of those 17 governors, only 1 is a Muslim. Then it was in Osun State. If you have that and you have to produce a president who is a Christian, as is today, how do you expect now that the Senate president wouldn't be a Christian? It only follows. But if in the North, for example, today, the president is from the North, and you have to produce a Northern Senate president, he's a Muslim. Nobody has ever quarreled or raised alarm about that, because it is understandable that in picking somebody from that area, the dominant faith will take it. In any case, don't forget that even when they did that last time, Dogara, many people did not even know that when Dogara was here, because his name is Yakubu, people concluded that everything was Muslim. Everything was Muslim. I've argued with my colleagues and most of my peers that each time you talk about religion, which is one of the arguments I put up on the Muslim ticket, it is that for political expediency, but for national unity, the permutations and the calculations must change and the equation must change. So if you say Ndume wants to be a speaker, a Senate president, you should please be conscious of the fact that he himself has gone through so much that he will not want to see the explosion of the South into a very cataclysmic configuration, especially in the South-South. Because if you remember, when the militancy was instigated in the South-South, one of the reasons was that we are producing so much oil and we are suffering the impact, and yet we are getting nothing. If now on the table of Nigeria's national cake, in the sharing of it, the South-South is now again left out at a time when they are seeing it as an opportunity for them to participate actively at the national level. Clearly, you will not be giving us the impression that we are part of this nation to which we have made so much sacrifice and we are still making so much sacrifice. So a person like Senator Godswill Akpabio, a person like if the former Deputy Senate President had recontested, you would have asked him and told him that he's not competent. He's a ranking senator by every definition. So
well,
for
on
me,
that note,
I imagine that it is only just and fair.
On that note, Mr. Obun, we'd like to thank you very much for joining us on The Morning Show.